Thanks for joining us on 6 Plus. I'm Bailey Bates. Here's what's in the news now. With Texas entering severe weather season, tow truck operators are preparing for one of their busiest and most dangerous times of the year. Our Juliana Jackson shows us how these workers are asking for your help to keep them safe.
Every winter brings new challenges for Bruce Winkler and his team at Temple Towing.
Our business is going to pick up and just makes it a lot more dangerous for the drivers on the road and us working alongside the road.
These roadside rescuers are already seeing a surge in weather-related calls.
We get a lot of batteries this time of year, cars that just won't start because it's affecting the components on the cars. A lot of people that have slid off into the ditch or something.
The winter months can be especially dangerous for all types of drivers on the road, but here at Temple Towing, they want to remind drivers of the law to slow down and move over.
There's more tow truck drivers killed per capita than police officers and firemen.
Texas law requires drivers to move over a lane or slow down by 20 miles per hour when passing emergency vehicles or tow trucks. The Texas Department of Public Safety says 3 tow truck drivers have been killed in Central Texas in recent years. Violations can bring fines up to $2,000 if a worker is injured. As temperatures drop, these operators are taking extra precautions.
If it gets icy, I've got them cleats to put on their boots. Hard to stay warm though when it's this cold.
For stranded motorists, Winkler shares this advice.
Get a hold of a tow truck, and if you're in a really bad position, call 911, get a hold of law enforcement, see if they can't come out and sit behind you till we get there.
But his most important message isn't about the weather at all.
Slow down and move over for us, because we've got families and children and grandchildren that we want to go home to, and they want to see us.
Jackson reporting tonight. To learn more on driving safety or to stay up to date on winter weather conditions, visit our website at KCENNTV.com. Now, businesses are looking for backup in case the Texas power grid fails or if it ever does again. There's a growing trend in making sure hospitals, water facilities, and H-E-B stores never go dark. Here's Malia Masamoto.
On top of many Texans' minds every time there's extreme weather is what will happen to the power grid.
Winter Storm Uri, we saw a really unacceptable performance from the grid.
The freeze in February 2021 affected 4.5 million customers across the state, and Hurricane Beryl put 2.7 million customers offline. Now customers are looking at a new way to ensure they receive energy.
I think microgrids are the future.
Over the last several years, the U.S. Department of Energy said Texas's use of microgrids grew faster than the rest of the nation.
The reason these are helpful is we are seeing so many complications running the ERCOT grid. We don't always have enough resources on the grid to support that.
Enchanted Rock is a microgrid developer that protects critical facilities like hospitals, water facilities, and nursing homes. They even supply microgrids to H-E-B in Texas.
Our units, because we're sharing them with the grid, it serves to keep the units ready to run for backup power in the case of an emergency.
In addition to being able to switch on and off when needed, Joel Yu says these microgrids can also be an extra energy source for the utility companies.
If you take a summer extreme heat case where there are no grid outages, but ERCOT's calling for all the power they can get, our units will pick up and run and support ERCOT.
Last legislative session, Texas lawmakers passed the Texas Energy Fund, which would put $1.8 billion toward a backup power program. It hasn't been implemented yet, but Yu says this will open up the future for more people to start using microgrids.
Well, according to ERCOT, the Texas power grid is going strong after our latest winter storm, but CEO Pablo Vega says ice and wind can cause local outages. When this does happen, microgrids can make sure important buildings don't lose power. A Troy man is speaking out about living in freezing conditions in his mobile home for over a month. He says he's made numerous calls to his property management company about the problem, but it remains unresolved. 6 News anchor Adrian Alexander has more on his frustrations and the mounting bills he is facing.
Clarence Carter is prepping for another cold night inside his home. He's lived in his mobile home in Troy since September, and neither his AC nor his heating system have ever worked properly.
The heat is not working. When I moved here, they said that everything was working.
To keep warm, he spent over $350 on space heaters for each room and has been forced to pay an increased electricity bill. Carter says he's been calling his realtor at Lynn Realty to fix his heat for over a month.
And I've been calling these people at least once a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, especially the last couple of weeks from December up and around.
They have brought in maintenance a few times to get the heating system working.
I even left them a note. Everything needs to be fixed when y'all come here. It's blowing out cold air and it never cuts off.
But it still fails to blow out hot air, so he's left to bear the cold.
I got one jacket on. I got 2 more over here that I put on, especially if I'm sitting here in the house. But if I get too cold in here, I go sit in my truck and cut my heat on till I get sleepy. I wear a CPAP at night. I can't wear the CPAP because the room temperature got the water too cold for me to breathe.
We contacted Lynn Realty about this issue and were placed on hold for 40 minutes. When we called back, they refused to provide any contact information or a point of contact to address Carter's heating problem. Just like they didn't respond to us, Carter says Lynn Realty has failed to respond to him with a proper fix to his heating system.
I'm not looking to cause them no problem or they cause me any problem. Just rectify the situation.
You can understand his frustrations with the situation. That was Adrian Alexander bringing us that story. 6 News will keep you posted on if and when Lynn Realty provides a statement about Carter's heating system and whether they resolve this issue. And more news tonight, a military panel has declared a Fort Cavasso soldier not guilty of murder. For nearly a year, police have accused Sergeant Marlon Best of shooting and killing 28-year-old Larry Kidd. Back in February, someone shot Kidd in front of the Killeen Wing Stop off Central Texas Expressway. According to the Army Office of Special Trial Counsel, Best has been in court since Wednesday. His trial ended Thursday night when the court found him not guilty of premeditated murder and disregard for human life. A Central Texas representative-elect is making a name for herself with a new bill. District 55's Hillary Hicklin has filed House Bill 1551. If passed, the bill would require schools to tell parents about criminal charges against teachers. It only applies to certain charges like murder, assault, and sex crimes. 6 News anchor Micah Wilson sat down with Hicklin to talk about the bill. She says it's about making schools safer by increasing accountability and communication.
This will help parents feel confident that their kids are safe at school, and if anything's going on, the school will let them know. So, I mean, that's what parents want. They want their kids to be safe at school, and this will help enhance the parents' confidence in that.
At the time of the recording, Hicklin has filed more than 15 bills for the legislative session. Some of those bills include increasing election integrity, creating better infrastructure in Central Texas, and even banning sex toys from retail stores. 6 News has her explanation for all of them, and you can watch our full interview with her right here on 6+. Up next, Chief Meteorologist Matt Farrell explains how hail forms. Thanks for watching in the news. I'm Bailey Bates. Have a good one.
Hello everyone, Chief Meteorologist Matt Farrell here with another installment of Weather Impact 101. Today we'll be talking about a weather phenomenon that FEMA estimates costs Americans more than $1 billion each year. We're talking, of course, about hail. According to the Dallas Morning News, Dallas is actually the hardest hit city in Texas each year with an expected loss of over $100 million. Today we're going to talk about how hail forms and how those stones can reach some pretty extraordinary sizes. So how does hail form? Well, to get to the bottom of that, we have to first understand a little bit more about how clouds form. So when we talk about thunderstorms, what's happening is we get these rising air currents from the ground that rise up into the atmosphere. And since the atmosphere near the ground cools with height, that humidity eventually condenses into a cloud and eventually rain from there. These rising currents of air are called updrafts. They also play a key role in how hail forms and how large it can get to be. So what happens is updrafts carry these water droplets well up into the atmosphere, especially in some of these larger storms that can get to be 30 to 40 to 50,000 feet above the ground. They eventually get to a point where the atmosphere is below freezing. We call that the freezing level. So as updrafts carry these drops of water up above the freezing level, as you might imagine would happen, those water droplets freeze into hailstones. Now, the strength of the updraft really determines how large our hailstones can be, because what's going to happen is once you get updrafts carrying these hailstones up above the freezing level, it's a little bit of a trampoline act. The hailstone tries to fall back out, but then that updraft carries it back up above the freezing level, and this process will continue until that hailstone gets too heavy. So what's happening is as that hailstone drops below the freezing level, it's collecting more water. And then the updraft carries it back up into the freezing layer. What happens is it's actually adding more water and then freezing, adding more water and then freezing. So if you were to cut into a hailstone, you would actually see this process much like if you were to cut into a tree. You would see the rings in the tree trunk. It's telling you how long it was up there and how many times it dropped below the freezing level and then climbed back up above. But eventually, what goes up must come down. Eventually, this hailstone will get so heavy that it no longer is able to be supported by the updraft, and that is when it falls to the ground. So in that way, the stronger the updraft, the larger the hailstone, because eventually the updraft just cannot support the weight of that hailstone anymore, and it falls. So with smaller hailstones, that tells you there's a weaker updraft, and with those very large hailstones, that tells you there's a very powerful updraft carrying up into the atmosphere. So how large can these hailstones get? Well, they can get pretty big, and we always come up with ways to kind of make it make a little more sense. When we talk about something being an inch in diameter or 2 inches in diameter, that doesn't necessarily always tell the whole story, so we come up with these comparisons, and I just want to go through a few of them with you right now. So the smallest hailstones that we usually get, about 1/4 of an inch in diameter, that's a pea. That's your basic green pea or sweet pea that you might get from the grocery store. Going up from there, once we get to a 1/2 inch diameter, well, that's a marble. The other way we can look at it is as we go from marble to penny, we don't typically use the marble designation too much anymore just because marbles aren't as popular as they once were. But at that point, we can usually pretty confidently say it's the size of a dime. From there up to 3/4 of an inch, we go up to the penny size. Nickel size is 7/8, but since we so rarely see that fraction, we usually don't talk about nickel. What we'll say is if they're 3/4 of an inch to an inch, we'll say, pennies, nickels, and quarters. But this is what we always refer to as pocket change sized hail. So if you hear us say pocket change sized hail on air, we're talking about pennies, nickels, and those quarters. Now, once we get up to quarter size, that's 1 inch in diameter, this is where things become dangerous. This is where they become damaging and also can cause injury. So once we get up to that quarter-sized hail, that 1 inch diameter hail, this is where we'll start to see severe thunderstorm warnings get issued by the National Weather Service to let you know that potentially destructive hail is on the way. From there, things get very dangerous. When we start talking ping pong ball size hail, that's 1.5 inch. Golf balls are 1 3/4 inches. Hen eggs, and we say hen eggs, but all eggs that we eat at home, the ones we get from the grocery store, the grade A large eggs, those are hen eggs. So this is just an egg, but that is 2 inches in diameter. Once you start to get up to tennis ball sized hail, we're talking broken windshields, we're talking roof damage. We can get roof damage anywhere along here. It just depends on the severity and how much hail is falling. But once we get up to tennis ball sized hail, yeah, we're starting to talk about broken windshields, broken windows, and then baseballs. For my baseball players out there, you never think about the size of a baseball. 2.75 inches doesn't seem like a lot, but if you've ever held a baseball, you know that is a very large hailstone and can do a lot of damage. After that, this is super rare. When we start talking about softball and grapefruit sized hail, we rarely see 4 to 4.5 inch hail. That is very large. That would be very destructive and deadly if you were caught outside when hailstones of that size are falling from the sky. But again, this is a quick comparison chart of the different sizes of hail that we see fairly commonly. Even though it says very rare and exceptionally rare, it is not out of the ordinary when we get to springtime in Texas for us to see anything from golf ball up to about baseball sized hail. So yes, it is rare, but it is something that we can be guaranteed we'll probably see somewhere in Texas at least once during the spring. So I said earlier that it depends on the strength of the updraft, how large these hailstones can get. Well, think about this. We don't usually feel updrafts. You don't really feel rising air. We feel horizontally blowing winds, but you don't really notice those updrafts. But think about this. In order for us to get just pea-sized hail, you have to have air rising into the atmosphere at about 24 miles per hour. To get marble-sized hail, or those dimes that we were talking about, you're talking 35 to 40 miles per hour there. once we get up to penny-sized hail. In order for us to get to quarter-sized hail, in order for us to get to that severe thunderstorm warning, you have to have air that is rising at 49 miles per hour to hold up those hailstones long enough for them to become the size of quarters. Once we start talking about these super rare events, tennis balls, baseballs, softballs, grapefruits, you're talking updraft speeds of anywhere from 77 to 81, all the way up to potentially 100 miles an hour there for grapefruit-sized hail. So think about that. That is, if those winds were blowing horizontally, we would absolutely notice that. But when we're talking about updrafts, it's rarely noticed, but it tells you sometimes how strong these storm systems can be and how much the temperature gradient, how much that temperature is dropping from the surface up into the cores of these storms. But that again is a look at the updraft speeds required to create hailstones of a given size. According to storm reports, the largest hailstone on record was found in South Dakota back in 2010. That was over 8 inches in diameter. That's a bowling ball, and it weighed almost 2 pounds. The heaviest hailstone on record actually fell in Bangladesh back in 1986, that coming in at 2.25 pounds. Now, unfortunately, there's not much that we can do to avoid hail damage outside, of course, of just quickly filing insurance claims and getting the damage repaired after the fact. Other than that, we just kind of have to endure it when it comes. That does it for another installment of Weather Impact 101. Be sure to binge all of our Weather Impact 101 segments on the free 6 Plus app on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. Until next time, this is 6 News Chief Meteorologist Matt Farrell.